Tonight, pressure on the Prime Minister, who is facing deadlines from his own MPs and the Bloc Québécois. Calls for Justin Trudeau to resign, as Nova Scotia's Premier calls a snap election.
A government with a fresh, new, strong mandate to stand up for our province.
Setting the stage for a late November vote.
He has chosen to spend $13 million of your money on a needless election.
There's been a lot of enforcement.
The federal push for more cooperation in combating car theft.
Let's treat revinning and auto theft as the national issue that it is.
Dock workers off the job at the Port of Montreal.
This strike, although it's just for one day, will create 4 or 5 days in backlog.
The concern for Canadian businesses watching the labor standoff. Plus, there's no place like home.
It's been just liberating.
How a Wizard of Oz Halloween display is inspiring kindness and creativity.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the growing pressure on the Prime Minister. This is set to be another critical week with his leadership of both the country and the Liberal Party under strain. Justin Trudeau faces 2 deadlines in the coming days, including from MPs who want him to step down. CTV's Colton Prale starts us off.
Good morning, Mark. Staring down a pair of ultimatums, Justin Trudeau is defiant.
That'll happen with me as leader going into the next election.
Members of his own party gave him until Monday to decide on his future. It took Trudeau just 18 hours to reject them.
Get away from that inner circle. Talk to your friends. Talk to your colleagues and really get a good read of the country and do the right thing.
Some big-name Liberals questioned the decision.
If it were me, I would be leaving. Simply because 10 years, I think, is a natural life expectancy.
Others warn it could make matters worse.
His own confidence, which used to be, I think, a strength, has now perhaps become a liability because people are saying, look, what else do we have to tell you?
The splinter group of over 24 MPs hasn't announced a clear plan if Trudeau doesn't step down. One told CTV's Question Period they want to continue the internal challenge.
I think a secret ballot is something that would be wanted. I think that would solve it once and for all.
Meanwhile, the Liberals risk losing a potential ally this week. The Bloc's deadline to pass changes to old age security payments and supply management is Tuesday, and unlikely to be met. Yves-François Blanchet has threatened to try to bring down the government in future confidence votes if they don't. It would leave the NDP as the only party to keep government going.
For the most part, they've got more to gain in this parliament than they would in a Conservative parliament.
The NDP say they won't bring forward a confidence motion given the opportunity, but the Conservatives do plan to force a vote to topple government. The only problem, the House of Commons is still paralyzed, now heading into week 4 of a debate over a green tech fund. Heather.
All right, Colton, thanks. Nova Scotia will be the next province to head to the polls with a snap election now set for November 26th.
That Nova Scotia needs a government with a fresh, new, strong mandate to stand up for our province.
Progressive Conservative leader Tim Houston visited the Lieutenant Governor to dissolve the current House. Houston is vying for a second term. The Premier had introduced legislation a few years ago cementing the fixed election date for next July. His call for a snap election has been criticized by the NDP, Liberals and the Green Party. Healthcare, the cost of living and a lack of affordable housing are expected to be among the main campaign issues. Saskatchewan's election campaign is close to the finish line. Voters will head to the polls tomorrow to elect their new provincial government. According to the latest data, the province has already smashed early voting records. More than 223,000 people have cast an early ballot. And tens of thousands of mail-in and absentee ballots are being counted in BC's election, with officials expecting that process to continue into Monday. Those ballots could make the difference in what is turning out to be a very tightly fought, drawn-out election. Well, with just 9 days left in the tight U.S. presidential election race, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are eyeing critical campaign stops.
And we are here because we are fighting for a democracy.
And we're going to defeat Kamala Harris, and we're going to win back the beautiful White House.
Trump addressed a jam-packed crowd rallying at one of the most famous arenas in America, Madison Square Garden in New York. Those in attendance included Elon Musk, Dr. Phil, and former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Meanwhile, Harris rallied in the Democratic stronghold of Philadelphia, where she's been trying to drum up support among Black and Latino voters. A one-day strike at the Port of Montreal is already having a significant impact around the country. It's an attempt by dock workers to ramp up pressure on their employer for a new contract. But today's work stoppage could be a preview of a longer battle to come. CTV's Kamal Karamali reports.
A usually noisy and fast-moving Port of Montreal came to a grinding halt today. Dock workers walking off the job for 24 hours, leaving the country's second biggest port idle.
The ports are absolutely critical to the supply chains and the infrastructure of the country.
An estimated $50 million worth of goods leave the Port of Montreal each day, so even a single-day strike can have a ripple effect.
For 1 day of strike, it's about 4 or 5 days that is needed to clear the backlog.
The move to keep the port at a standstill Sunday is to ramp up pressure on employers amid a labor standoff. The union, representing nearly 1,200 longshore workers, has been without a collective agreement since the beginning of the year. They've already halted overtime shifts and held a 3-day strike about a month ago, a work stoppage that is still being felt by some businesses.
I think it's more of a signal that there's more to come.
There are fears of more strikes if the two sides don't come to an agreement. Add other recent disruptions, including the CN rail dispute back in August, the BC port strike, and the St. Lawrence Seaway strike last year, causing continued supply chain issues. Businesses are calling for Ottawa to intervene.
We want to see the federal government move forward in making ports an essential service, so that port can remain fully operational at all time.
The Labour Minister's office says for now, the focus is for the parties to find an agreement. The union wouldn't comment today, but the Maritime Employers Association says it hopes upcoming discussions will lead to a return to the negotiation table quickly. Heather.
Thank you, Kamal. A push tonight from the federal government to close loopholes criminals are using to resell stolen cars. Canada's Transport Minister is pleading with provinces to collaborate more. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has more.
It only takes seconds and they're gone. Within hours of being taken, many stolen cars in Canada are shipped away and sent around the world, but not all.
Let's treat revinning and auto theft as the national issue that it is.
In a letter to provinces and territories today, Canada's Transportation Minister putting the focus on stolen cars that are being resold in the country after having their vehicle identification numbers changed.
Essentially, it's cloning. So you have a vehicle maybe living alive and well in California. They'll use that VIN and re-VIN it in Ontario, Alberta. It's a problem across the country right now.
The letter from the minister's office calls for participation in an interprovincial record exchange program, which would allow for better tracking of revinning.
And we've seen the provinces and territories step up to collaborate, especially during the pandemic. And so we need to see that type of collaboration right now on the revinning issue, which police forces tell us is on the rise.
According to insurance crime watchdog Equité Association, more than 70,000 private vehicles were stolen in the country last year. In the first half of 2024, auto theft is down 17% year over year, but revinning is up.
The provinces are on.
And this former OPP commissioner believes thieves have shifted their focus.
You know, it's always a push-pull thing. If you put pressure on outgoing vehicles leaving the country, they'll try and sell them more internally.
Ontario says it's working on legislation to counter revinning, but believes it's not the main issue.
But ultimately, what we need here to stop auto theft in our communities is bail reform.
In May, the federal government launched a national plan to combat auto theft. And while numbers are down to start the year, they're still more than double what they were a decade ago. Heather?
CTV's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. To the Middle East now, where Israeli police are investigating a suspected terror attack. A truck rammed into a bus stop near a military base north of Tel Aviv. One man was killed, dozens injured. Most victims were seniors. While in Gaza, no end to the fighting. Palestinian officials say several people were killed in a strike in the north. Meanwhile, hostage negotiations are underway in Qatar. Egypt's president has proposed a 2-day ceasefire in exchange for 4 hostages as a way of jump-starting talks. And Iran's supreme leader says Israel miscalculated with its airstrike on military targets Friday that killed 4 soldiers. While at a memorial for those killed on October 7th, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel achieved its objectives in striking Iran. He was also heckled by bereaved families angry over his handling of the war and the hostage crisis. Frustration with the Canadian healthcare system has one patient turning elsewhere for help. We're hearing tonight from a Winnipeg man who has lived in pain for years while awaiting a much-needed back surgery. CTV's Alex Karpa on why he's decided to leave the country to get care.
It's been a long and painful journey for Winnipegger Shane Komar. He has waited nearly 6 years for back surgery and decided he can no longer wait.
Well, my best friend Dan Precourt said, enough's enough. You need to get your back surgery done and you need to go to Germany.
Komar said the pain began in 2016 and it just kept getting worse from there. He said doctors have not been able to tell him the source of the injury. A CT scan back in 2018 revealed the need to have 2 vertebrae fused and 3 discs replaced.
I haven't been able to work, so we've had to dip into our retirement savings. We borrowed some money from some friends and family, and it's like I need to get my back fixed so that I can get back out there, get a job, and start feeling like a normal human being again.
Komar will be going to Germany for his surgery at the end of November, but he says the cost is immense.
The price tag for my back to get fixed, not including airfare, is just over $60,000.
Komar is one of many Manitobans who have had to seek surgical procedures outside of Canada. Orthopedic surgeon Dr. Matthew Fredericks in Fargo, North Dakota, says he is seeing more and more patients from Manitoba on a consistent basis.
It's going to be 18 months to 2 years, and they can come down and I can see them the same day, or see them one day and do their knee surgery the next.
One of Komar's best friends set up a GoFundMe page to raise money for the surgery, which is over $18,000. While thankful, Komar wishes this could have all been avoided with a timely surgery in his hometown.
For whatever reason, 6 years later, I'm still waiting. So it's very frustrating.
A spokesperson for Manitoba's health minister told CTV News that they have been in contact with Komar and have directed Shared Health and the surgical team to follow up with him to provide an update. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Coming up, business owners beware.
Cyber insecurity is the problem of our time, and it's getting worse.
The impact of cybercrime on Canadian businesses. Plus, brotherly showdown. Twins from Ontario face off on NFL Sunday. Having an online presence is critical for many Canadian businesses. It helps create new opportunities, but it also exposes many risks when it comes to privacy and data protection. The cost on recovery from cybersecurity is now soaring. Here's CTV's Rachel Crowe spreading wings.
Statistics Canada found that some businesses paid a ransom of more than $500,000 after a cyber attack last year.
Cyber insecurity is the problem of our time, and it's getting worse. Unfortunately, more of us are falling victim to cyber criminals, whether we're individuals or organizations. The amount of money that's being lost is spiraling out of control.
More than 12,000 businesses were surveyed for the report. Last year, it was estimated 2% of Canadian businesses were reported as targets for ransomware.
Ransomware delete the things, and they encrypt the whole infrastructure, and they ask money to the business. And there's no way to decrypt this whole data. Then sometimes companies just pay all the money.
While most didn't make a payment, 12% did give money to the attackers.
It opens up a hornet's nest of additional risk, and unfortunately, cybercriminals know this all too well, and they're boring in on their weakest victims.
84% of payments were under $10,000. 4% of businesses dished out over $500,000.
What's particularly troubling here is that the dollar figures are growing so quickly, doubling, tripling year over year. Billions of dollars being spent to both prevent this kind of thing from happening and then recovering from it after. And so, we aren't prioritizing cybersecurity to the degree that we should.
Only 13% of businesses who fell victim to cyber attacks actually reported it to police, but that number is up from 10% in 2021.
The reason I can imagine from the company side who don't report is maybe they don't want to give the bad impression to the customers,
Canadian businesses spent more than $1 billion recovering from cybersecurity incidents last year and 10 times that on prevention and detection. Rachel Crowe, Spreading Wings, CTV News, Edmonton.
Still ahead, bracing for bad news. Why Canada's used car market is preparing for a possible inventory slowdown. Just when the used car market was getting revved up, there are now heightened concerns that another vehicle inventory slowdown could be just around the corner. And that could have an impact on how much you pay for a used car. Here's CTV's Paul Hollingsworth.
Based on first appearances, this is a good time to be selling cars for a living.
There's a ton of cars for sale. The lots are full. The new car lots are full.
This used car lot is jammed.
I'm very brand loyal, so it comes to what I'm looking for is very specific.
There are plenty of choices for patient shoppers. However, bad news could soon be on the way. Canada's used car market is bracing for another vehicle inventory shortage.
During COVID, there were supply issues with new cars and less vehicles were available and sold. So that means when you have less new vehicles, you have less used vehicles that are coming to the market.
The COVID years represented a dark era for car sales. A lack of new vehicles coming off the assembly line was only part of the problem.
The rental car companies that feed a lot of the auction houses in Canada and the US were down on inventory because they were running their vehicles 2 to 3, 4 times longer.
Post-pandemic, consumers are also changing their spending habits. Instead of choosing a used car, they are exploring other options.
We have a large percentage of the market that are payment buyers. So with the return to leasing, we are finding people going, well, you know what, maybe I will just go ahead and lease that new car.
Many drivers are signing long-term leasing agreements.
Which means more people are holding on to their new vehicles and there are less vehicles again coming to the used market.
These concerns about a possible inventory slowdown impacting the used car industry come at a time when these cars are already more expensive than ever before. 5 years ago, the average cost for a used car in Canada was almost $19,000. Now that price tag has nearly doubled. There is some good news. In recent months, used car prices have slightly dipped.
If you see a vehicle that you like and the price is right, you're probably better off buying that vehicle now and just having that peace of mind.
If not, you could be forced to pay more in the near future because fewer cars could be available. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
To baseball now, and relief for Dodgers fans. Superstar Shohei Otani is expected to play in Game 3 of the World Series after partially dislocating his left shoulder.
He's got to still go through the workout and swing the bat. But again, today feels better than yesterday. And our assumption is tomorrow's going to feel better than today.
The Dodgers say Otani could play against the Yankees tomorrow if he feels good enough. The 30-year-old hurt his shoulder when trying to steal second base in Game 2. Well, today's NFL Sunday was a first for one London, Ontario family. Identical twin brothers Sydney and Chase Brown faced off against each other as the Philadelphia Eagles and Cincinnati Bengals squared off.
It's cool, to have it with him and
since little kids, we've been really thinking about this, and so to kind of manifest it and, turn that into a reality and have that moment today, it's been really nice. Definitely a special moment, not only for us, but our family, and having everybody here in one stadium and being able to catch up has been amazing.
Chase is a Bengals running back and Sydney is an Eagles defensive back. Both Canadians played football together in high school and at Illinois. Family and friends from Canada made the 6-hour trek to Cincinnati to watch the game. The Eagles won 37-17. Tough to know who to cheer for. After the break, we're following the Yellow Brick Road. The whimsical stories behind this creative Halloween display. Finally for us tonight, a Victoria woman is inspiring people to connect through creativity, turning thrift store finds into works of art for all to enjoy. CTV's Adam Sawatsky on the Halloween display somewhere over the rainbow.
For decades, it was almost like Deborah Briggs was working in black and white.
It's just it's a mundane job, the doldrums.
There was certainly no opportunity for creativity until, like Dorothy waking up in the world of Oz, Deborah retired.
Oh, it's been just liberating.
But instead of following a yellow brick road, this empty nester started turning one of her kids' rooms into a space for her previously unexpressed creativity.
It's a joy to be able to do that.
When Deborah's not making up for lost time by transforming ordinary wool into extraordinary animals, she's turning thrift store finds and custom creations into one-of-a-kind Halloween displays.
All the girls in the front you'll see are made from shower curtains and bath towels.
Well, this structure was repurposed after a neighbor was set to discard it during a recent reno.
It's now the house that landed on the witch.
And not just any witch, you likely already guessed, but the Wicked Witch of the East.
It doesn't have to be lots of blood and guts and gore. Everything is a story for me.
And the story that Deborah's telling in her front yard this Halloween is about a girl named Dorothy with a dog called Toto who gets sucked up by a cyclone, dropped down in a magical world, and befriended by a trio of now classic characters.
Okay, so here we have the Tin Man, this is the Lion.
And this, the Scarecrow. Although sometimes they're Deborah's now adult kids, returning home to dress in costume to help our ruby slipper-wearing heroine outsmart the Wicked Witch of the West and uncover the truth about the Wizard of Oz, all the while inviting hundreds of visitors to donate thousands of dollars to local charities.
The world is very precarious right now, and I think people need to smile a bit more and need some joy.
And if we can connect with our creativity and use it to help others, Deborah says, we just might find that instead of longing to be somewhere over the rainbow, we're celebrating there's no place like home. Adam Sawatsky, CTV News.
Great display. That is our newscast for this Sunday night. I'm Heather Butts. Thank you for watching. Sandy will be here tomorrow with CTV National News at 5:30, and I'll see you again in the evening. Good night.